The city of Ajurin gleamed under the dual moons, its spherical buildings reflecting the bioluminescent lights that lined the streets. The ecological metropolis, with its hanging gardens and sustainable technologies, stood as a testament to the advanced civilization of the Zakar species. Green-scaled beings with naturally glowing backs moved through the streets, their community-focused way of life evident in the way they greeted each other, shared resources, and made decisions collectively through family councils. It was the year 2375 DTL, downtime loop, equivalent to the mid-24th century by Earth's calendar. The multiplanetary civilization had established technological marvels and interplanetary alliances. Yet old prejudices lingered beneath the surface, particularly the wariness toward humans, a remnant of the ancient continental Earth wars. On the outskirts of the city, where the dense, magical forest began to encroach upon civilization, a small figure huddled against the trunk of a massive tree. Aaron, approximately 8 years old by human standards, shivered in the cool night air, abandoned, hungry, and injured. The child had no understanding of how they had ended up on this strange planet, so far from anything familiar. A hunting party of Zakar discovered the human child during their evening patrol. The unusual sight of a small, pink-skinned being with no scales or bioluminescence caused immediate alarm among the hunters. They debated what to do with this unexpected discovery. "It's a human child," said one hunter, his scales shifting to a cautious amber color. "We should inform the village council immediately." "Humans are dangerous," another hunter warned, her back glowing brighter with anxiety. "The Earth-Continental Wars nearly destroyed our ancestors' outposts." The lead hunter, Vorak, approached the trembling child carefully. His broad shoulders and deep emerald scales marked him as a respected member of the community. "This is no warrior," he said softly. "It's a lost child, injured and afraid." They brought Aaron to the village, and news spread quickly. The village council convened an emergency meeting, with elders and family representatives gathering in the communal hall. The debate was heated. "The human must be turned over to the Interspecies Authority," insisted Malden, a conservative elder with faded blue scales. "They have protocols for handling misplaced beings." "Look at its condition," argued Calith, Vorak's mate, her scales shifting to a compassionate violet. "This child needs immediate care, not bureaucratic processing." "Humans are unpredictable," countered another elder. "They lack our community values. How could it possibly integrate?" After hours of debate, the council reached a tentative decision. The human child would be temporarily housed while they contacted the Interspecies Authority. But, as the meeting adjourned, Vorak and Calith exchanged meaningful glances. That night, instead of delivering Aaron to the designated holding facility, they brought the child to their own home. "We'll care for you," Calith whispered, her scales glowing a warm, maternal amber as she cleaned Aaron's wounds. "You're safe now." Their home was a modest sphere suspended among the bioluminescent trees at the edge of the village. Inside, 2 young Zakar children watched curiously as their parents brought in the strange pink being. "What is it?" asked Zeli, the older child at 12 years by Zakar standards, her scales flashing with curious teal patterns. "A human child," Vorak explained, his voice gentle but firm. "And for now, your new sibling." "Really?" 5-year-old Rin approached cautiously, his infant scales still developing their glow. "Can it speak?" Aaron watched them all with wide, frightened eyes, unable to understand their language but sensing their intention to help. The child had not spoken since being found. The first weeks were challenging. Calith, a language specialist, worked patiently with Aaron to establish basic communication. Using visual aids and gentle repetition, she helped the human child learn fundamental Zakar words. "Food," she would say, offering a plate of nutrient-rich vegetation that had been carefully tested to ensure it was safe for human consumption. Food, Aaron would repeat hesitantly, the alien syllables strange on the human tongue. Zelly took it upon herself to introduce Aaron to the community playground, though this drew stares and whispers from other Zakar children. "Ignore them," Zelly told Aaron, her scales flashing protectively. "They're just curious because you're different." Meanwhile, Vorak faced increasing pressure from neighbors and colleagues. "You're harboring an outsider," one neighbor warned him during a community gathering. "The council hasn't officially approved this arrangement." "The child needs care," Vorak responded firmly. "We're providing it until proper decisions can be made." But rumors spread, and soon the family found themselves under scrutiny. Some community members began to avoid them, while others openly questioned their judgment. As weeks turned into months, Aaron began to adapt. The human child learned more of the Zakar language, discovered which local foods were palatable, and started to form bonds with the family, particularly with Zelly and Rin. But internally, Aaron struggled with conflicting emotions, gratitude toward this alien family that had offered protection, but also a deep longing for Earth and memories of birth parents that were becoming increasingly hazy. Calith encouraged Aaron's education, introducing the child to Zakar science and history through interactive holograms and tactile learning tools. She noticed Aaron's quick mind and adaptability. "You're learning faster than I expected," she told the child one evening, her scales glowing with maternal pride. Vorak, however, grew increasingly concerned for Aaron's safety as community tension mounted. "We need to be careful," he told Calith when they were alone. "Some are suggesting we're putting our own children at risk by keeping a human in our home." "That's absurd," Calith replied, her scales darkening with indignation. "Aaron is just a child." "Not everyone sees it that way," Vorak sighed. "The wounds from the old wars run deep." 3 months after Aaron's arrival, the situation escalated dramatically. A popular interplanetary social network published a provocative headline: "Earth revisits war crimes, human child raised on Ajrin." The article speculated wildly about why a human child was on their planet and insinuated sinister motives. The village council reconvened, and this time, the debate was more heated than ever. "This has gone on long enough," Malden declared, his scales pulsing with agitation. "The human must be removed from our community before it brings unwanted attention, or worse." A group of influential clan leaders began a campaign to have Aaron removed from the Zakar family, threatening social sanctions against Vorak and Calith if they didn't comply. Standing before the council, Calith made an impassioned plea. "We must prioritize compassionate development for all orphan children, regardless of species. Aaron deserves the opportunity to live and grow in a loving environment." Vorak stood firmly beside her. "If we turn away this child because of species differences, what does that say about our values? About our claim to be an advanced civilization?" The council remained divided, but the controversy had attracted the attention of the Interspecies Authority. 6 months after Aaron had been found, an official representative arrived in the village. Special Envoy Ryden was imposing even by Zakar standards, with deep indigo scales and a ceremonial rank marker embedded in his forehead crest. "I am here to assess the situation regarding the human child," he announced upon arrival. "Interplanetary regulations are clear about cross-species guardianship." Aaron was temporarily separated from the family for genetic testing and background investigation. The Zakar community watched with mixed reactions as the human child was escorted to a mobile examination unit that had landed at the village outskirts. During the separation, Aaron used broken Zakar language and human idioms to express a desire to find birth parents. "Want find, my people," the child told the examiners. But also, "Stay with Calith Vorak family." Calith was heartbroken at the thought of losing Aaron. She began researching human origins, trying to find clues about how a human child could have ended up on their planet. The family dynamics became strained. Zelly fiercely defended her human sibling, getting into arguments with other young Zakar, who repeated their parents' prejudices. Some extended family members, like Sykra and Malden, demanded that Vorak prioritize the well-being of our species by surrendering Aaron to the authorities. After weeks of investigation, the Interspecies Authority called for a village vote. Should Aaron remain as an official member of the Zakar family, or be transferred to the Authority for Resettlement on Earth? The preliminary polling suggested a slight majority favored removal. Devastated by this news, and feeling responsible for the family's troubles, Aaron made a fateful decision. In the middle of the night, the human child packed a small bag with food and a bio-lantern, then slipped out of the family home into the dangerous forest. "I won't cause them any more pain," Aaron whispered, tears streaming down the child's face as the glowing homes of the Zakar village receded into the distance. It didn't take long for Calith to discover Aaron's absence. "Vorak!" she cried, her scales pulsing with panic. "Aaron is gone!" They immediately organized a search party. Vorak, Calith, and Zelly ventured into the sacred forest, which was especially dangerous at night. The temperature dropped dramatically, and giant rock beetles, predatory insects the size of small dogs, became active after dark. "Aaron!" Vorak called out, his voice echoing through the trees. "Come back, it's not safe!" Meanwhile, Aaron wandered deeper into the forest, disoriented and increasingly afraid. The bio-lantern cast eerie shadows, and strange sounds emanated from the darkness. Suddenly, the ground began to vibrate. One of Azurin's notorious space vortexes was forming nearby, a dangerous geographical phenomenon that could displace matter across significant distances. "Help!" Aaron cried out as the vortex's pull began to tug at the surrounding vegetation. The child clung to a tree trunk, the bio-lantern dropped and forgotten on the forest floor. In that moment of terror, Aaron heard familiar voices. Zelly and Vorak had followed the light of the abandoned lantern and rushed toward the sound of Aaron's cries. "Hold on!" Vorak shouted, extending his arm toward the human child. His scales were glowing intensely with protective fervor. Just as Vorak reached Aaron, the situation became even more dire. A group of Interspecies Authority agents, who had been monitoring the village due to the controversy, descended from hovering vehicles. They had detected the unusual energy pattern of the space vortex and had come to investigate. "Step away from the human," commanded the lead agent, Special Envoy Raiden himself. "Interspecies protocols dictate that we assume custody in emergency situations." "No!" Aaron shouted, finding courage in the moment of crisis. "I want to stay with this family. They raised me, protected me." Vorak stood protectively between Aaron and the officials. "This child is under our care. We will not abandon Aaron now." A tense standoff ensued, with the space vortex still pulsing ominously nearby and rock beetles beginning to circle, attracted by the commotion. Seeing the genuine bond between the human child and the Zakar family, Raiden made an unexpected decision. "We will grant a 48-hour probationary period to demonstrate successful cultural integration. The final decision will be made at a public village council meeting." The family returned home, grateful for the reprieve, but aware that the real challenge still lay ahead. They had 2 days to prepare for a public hearing that would determine Aaron's fate. "We need to show them who you really are," Calith told Aaron, her scales glowing with determination. "Not just a human, but a child who belongs here, with us." The village council chambers were packed for the public hearing. It seemed everyone in the community wanted to witness this unprecedented event. The Interspecies Authority officials sat at a special table, with Raiden at its center, his expression unreadable. Aaron stood before them all, wearing traditional Zakar clothing that had been carefully modified to fit a human form. Using both Zakar language and Earth English, the child shared the journey of the past 3 months, the love received from the adoptive family, the cultural knowledge gained, and a commitment to contributing positively to the community. "I may not have scales," Arin said, voice trembling slightly, but gaining strength with each word. "I may not glow like you, but in my heart, I feel what you feel. I understand the value of community over self. I want to be part of your world, even as I honor where I came from." Zeli stepped forward to stand beside her human sibling. "Arin has learned our ways, faster than many Zakar children, and we have learned from Arin too. Isn't that what makes our civilization great? Our ability to grow and learn from others." The debate that followed was intense. "Human compassion transcends concerns about survival," argued Caliph, her scales shifting to a passionate crimson as she addressed the council. Malden and the conservative elders countered with warnings about preserving genetic purity and cultural cohesion. But their arguments seemed increasingly hollow as Arin demonstrated both knowledge of Zakar customs and genuine attachment to the adoptive family. In a surprising turn, some younger community members who had initially been suspicious of Arin spoke up in support. "If we reject this child based on species alone, we betray our own values of community and care," said one young Zakar teacher. After hours of testimony and debate, the Interspecies Authority conferred privately. When they returned, Ryden addressed the assembly. "The purpose of our protocols is not to separate families, but to ensure the welfare of all beings," he stated formally. "In this case, it is clear that the human child Arin has formed genuine bonds with the family of Calith and Vorak. Furthermore, we find evidence of successful cultural integration while maintaining respect for the child's origins." He paused, looking directly at Arin. "Therefore, we grant official recognition of Arin as a member of the Zakar community, with special status to maintain connection between our two planets. This case may serve as a precedent for future cross-species adoptions under careful supervision." The chamber erupted in mixed reactions, many cheers, some murmurs of dissent, but overall, a sense of relief and resolution. Calith and Vorak embraced Arin, their scales glowing with joy and pride. 1 year later, Arin had fully integrated into Zakar society. The human child had mastered traditional Zakar food preparation, social rules, and had even developed a translation application that helped bridge Earth and Zakar languages, benefiting the entire community. The family was awarded the Interstellar Humanitarian Medal for their compassionate action and persistence in the face of social pressure. Their story inspired others and helped reduce tensions between humans and Zakar throughout the planetary alliance. Earth and Ajurin established a cultural exchange program, with Arin as its symbol. The human child maintained regular video calls with a birth mother, who had been located through the Interspecies Authority's investigation, and occasionally hosted the adoptive parents on visits to Earth. As Arin looked out at the dual sunset of Ajurin one evening, standing between Calith and Vorak, with Zeli and Rin nearby, the once-lost human child reflected on the journey that had brought them all together. Difference, Arin had learned, was not a barrier, but a beginning, the starting point of friendship and mutual growth. "Are you happy here?" Calith asked, her scales glowing with maternal warmth. "More than I ever thought possible," Arin replied, reaching out to take both Calith's and Vorak's hands. "You showed me that family isn't about what you look like or where you're from. It's about who loves you and who you love in return." In the distance, the lights of the city began to illuminate as darkness fell, each glowing sphere a reminder of the countless families, of all species, who called this world home. The morning sunlight filtered through the translucent walls of the Zakar family home, casting rainbow patterns across the floor where Arin sat cross-legged, attempting to master a traditional Zakar meditation pose. After a year on Ajurin, the human child had grown taller and stronger, though still unmistakably different from the scaled family members who had become Arin's world. Your biorhythms are stabilizing nicely, observed Kalith, her scales shifting to an approving azure as she monitored the readings on a small device. As a language specialist who had expanded her expertise to include human physiology, she had become somewhat of an authority on cross-species adaptation. Your body is adjusting to our planetary cycles. Aaron opened one eye. Does that mean I can stay up for the Night of Ascending Lights Festival this year? Kalith laughed, the sound like chiming crystals. We'll see. Vorak is still concerned about the effect of the triple moonlight on your human retinas. From the cooking alcove, Vorak called out. I heard that. And yes, I'm concerned. Dr. Marin from the Interspecies Medical Division suggested we proceed with caution regarding exposure to our celestial phenomena. Zelly, now 13 and increasingly independent, swooped into the room, her adolescent scales glowing with vibrant patterns that reflected her energetic mood. Oh, let Aaron come. Everyone at school is talking about the festival. It would be cruel to make our human stay home again. I've been practicing with the light simulators, Aaron added hopefully. And I made these. The child proudly displayed a pair of protective goggles, fashioned from modified Zakar swimming lenses. They'll filter the harmful spectrums. Vorak emerged from the cooking alcove, his broad frame filling the doorway. The scent of nurturing herbs followed him. He had been preparing the morning meal with traditional ingredients, known to support immune function. Your ingenuity continues to impress me, he said, examining the goggles. Perhaps we can arrange a compromise. Attendance for the first half of the festival, before the moons reach their apex. Aaron's face lit up with a smile that, despite the obvious physical differences, contained the same joy as any Zakar child's would. Thank you. I promise to follow all safety protocols. Young Rin tumbled into the room, his 6-year-old energy barely contained. Aaron, will you help me with my biology project today? I'm studying comparative cellular structures, and I need a human sample. Rin, Kalith gently admonished. What have we discussed about biological boundaries? The young Zakar's scales dimmed slightly with embarrassment. That we must always respect bodily autonomy and obtain explicit consent for any sampling procedure. It's okay, Aaron reassured them. I don't mind contributing to science. Just a cheek swab, right? Nothing involving needles this time? Promise, Rin brightened immediately. Just a surface sample for the school microscope. Their domestic morning routine was interrupted by the soft chime of the communication system. Vorak answered, his expression growing serious as he listened to the message. When he disconnected, the family looked at him expectantly. That was the Education Council, he said slowly. They've finally reached a decision about Aaron's application to the Advanced Sciences Academy. Kalith moved closer, her scales shifting to an anxious yellow. And? They've approved it, Vorak announced, breaking into a wide smile. With special accommodations for human learning patterns, Aaron will start next semester. The room erupted in celebration. The Advanced Sciences Academy was the most prestigious educational institution in their region, and no human had ever been admitted before. It represented not just personal achievement for Aaron, but another step toward broader acceptance. I knew you could do it, Zelly exclaimed, embracing her human sibling. Your spatial reasoning scores must have impressed them. This calls for a special breakfast, Vorak declared, returning to his cooking. I'll prepare celebration bread with the sweet enzyme glaze. As the family gathered around their floating dining table, enjoying the special meal, Aaron felt a momentary pang of bittersweetness. I wish my Earth Mother could see this, the child said quietly. The table fell silent. Though Aaron had established occasional communication with the birth mother, located by the Interspecies Authority, interplanetary travel restrictions meant physical reunions were rare and brief. Kalith reached across the table, her scales shifting to a comforting lavender. She would be proud of you, just as we are. And remember, She's scheduled to visit during the equinox break. Two families are better than one, Rin offered innocently. His young mind simplifying what the adults knew was a complex emotional terrain. Aaron nodded, grateful for their understanding. You're right. I'm lucky that way. After breakfast, as Aaron and Zelly prepared to leave for their current school, the home communication system chimed again, this time with a public alert tone that indicated a community-wide announcement. The family gathered around the holographic display as the image of Elder Sakra, now the head of the village council, materialized in their living space. Attention citizens of Eastern Ajrin District, the elder began, her ancient scales barely glowing anymore with age. The Interstellar Relations Committee has announced a significant policy change regarding human-Zakar interactions. The family exchanged nervous glances. Despite Aaron's official acceptance into their community, broader political tensions between humans and Zakar still fluctuated with interplanetary events. Following the success of our first cross-species integration case, Elder Sakra continued, with a nod that everyone knew referred to Aaron. The committee has approved expanded cultural exchange programs. Selected human families will be invited to visit Ajrin for extended diplomatic stays, and Zakar representatives will reciprocate on Earth. That's wonderful news, Kalith exclaimed, her scales brightening with excitement. The barriers are finally coming down. But Elder Sakra wasn't finished. However, in light of recent territorial disputes in the Outer Rim, security protocols will be enhanced. All cross-species families must register for additional monitoring and periodic assessment. Vorak's scales darkened with concern. Additional monitoring? What does that mean for us? The announcement concluded with instructions for affected families to report to their local authority office within 7 planetary cycles. As the hologram faded, the earlier celebratory mood dimmed considerably. It's just bureaucracy, Kalith said, trying to sound reassuring. A formality because of the expansion program? Maybe, Vorak replied, unconvinced. Or it could be that the conservative factions are pushing back against progress. Aaron looked between them, picking up on the tension despite their attempts to minimize it. Is this because of me? Are you going to be in trouble again? No. Starlight, Kalith said firmly, using the affectionate term she had adopted for her human child. This is about systems adjusting to change. Change that you helped make possible. She knelt to meet Aaron's eyes directly. Never think that your presence here is anything but a blessing to this family and our community. Zelly checked the time on her biosynchronized wristband. We should go, or we'll be late for school. Yes, go, Vorak agreed, his practical nature reasserting itself. Celebrate your academy acceptance with your friends. I'll visit the authority office today and find out exactly what these new protocols entail. As Aaron and Zelly left the family dome, they joined the stream of young Zakar heading toward the community learning center. Though most had grown accustomed to seeing a human among them, Aaron still noticed occasional stares and whispers, particularly from visitors to their district. Ignore them, Zelly said, just as she had on Aaron's first day in the community. They'll learn eventually. At the school entrance, they were met by a small group of Zelly's friends who had become Aaron's allies as well. They swarmed around the human child, scales, flashing in congratulatory patterns upon hearing the news about the academy acceptance. You'll be the first human ever to study quantum biology under Professor Thalv, exclaimed Neri, a Zakar girl whose quick intelligence had initially made her skeptical of Aaron, but who had become a close friend. The professor's tough, warned Lax, his adolescent scales still awkwardly shifting between child and adult patterns. My older sibling said the failure rate is nearly 30%. Aaron won't fail, Zelly stated with absolute confidence. My sibling understands Zakar scientific principles better than most natives. Aaron blushed at the praise, but felt a surge of determination. I've been studying additional materials that Kalith obtained from the Academy archives. The multidimensional aspects of quantum biology are fascinating, especially when compared to Earth's linear approach. The morning classes proceeded normally until midway through cultural studies, when the classroom communication panel lit up with an urgent message for the teacher. After reading it, she approached Aaron with an uncharacteristically solemn expression. "Aaron, you're needed at the administrative dome immediately. Your guardian Vorak is there." A ripple of murmurs spread through the classroom. Being summoned during school hours was unusual and often indicated trouble. "What's happening?" Aaron asked. "Already gathering belongings?" "I'm not informed of the details," the teacher replied. "Only that it's regarding new interspecies authority protocols." Zelly stood up. "I'm coming too." "No, Zelly," the teacher said firmly. "The summons is for Aaron only." With an anxious glance back at Zelly, Aaron left the classroom and was escorted to the administrative dome by a school official. Inside, Vorak was waiting, his scales a turbulent mix of colors that betrayed his agitation despite his composed facial expression. Standing beside him was a Zakar Aaron had never seen before, tall, with unusually dark scales, and the distinctive insignia of the Interspecies Authority on his ceremonial collar. "Aaron," Vorak said carefully, "this is Commissioner Ethel from the Central Authority. He has some questions for us regarding the new integration protocols." Commissioner Ethel studied Aaron with clinical interest. "So this is the human pioneer," he said, his tone neither friendly nor hostile but detached. "Scientific. Fascinating adaptation indicators. The posture modifications to accommodate Zakar furniture. The subtle shifts in vocal patterns to better produce our language sounds." Aaron felt uncomfortably like a specimen. "I've worked hard to adapt, sir." "Indeed." The commissioner activated a holographic display showing complex data streams. "Your case has become something of a reference point for our expanded integration program. However, certain genetic markers in your profile have raised questions about long-term compatibility with our environment." Vorak's scales flashed with alarm. "What questions? Aaron has thrived here for over a year. The medical evaluations have all been positive." "Physical adaptation is only one factor," Commissioner Ethel replied smoothly. "We must also consider psychological integration, cultural preservation, and potential unforeseen consequences of prolonged cross-species exposure." A cold feeling settled in Aaron's stomach. "Are you saying I can't stay with my family?" "I'm saying," the commissioner continued, "that your situation requires enhanced monitoring. Specifically, we're implementing a new protocol that includes regular cognitive assessments, genetic sampling, and temporary observation periods at our central facility." "Observation periods?" Vorak's scales darkened to a dangerous crimson. "You mean separation from our family? That is completely unacceptable." "It would be brief," Ethel assured them. "Perhaps one planetary cycle every quarter, merely to establish baseline data in a controlled environment." "No." Vorak's response was immediate and firm. "We agreed to registration and reasonable monitoring, but not to periodic removal of our child from our home. The psychological impact alone would be harmful." Commissioner Ethel's scales rippled with irritation. "This isn't a negotiation, Citizen Vorak. The protocols have been approved at the highest levels of government. The first observation period is scheduled to begin tomorrow." Aaron looked up at Vorak in panic. Memories of the earlier separation flooding back. The sterile examination rooms. The loneliness. The fear of never returning home. "There must be alternatives," Vorak insisted. "Home monitoring, remote sensing. Anything that doesn't involve separation." "I'm afraid not." The commissioner's tone indicated the conversation was over. "I suggest you use today to prepare the human for tomorrow's transfer. A transport will arrive at your residence at first light." He turned to leave, then paused. "This is for the greater good of both our species. Citizen Vorak, your family's pioneering role is commendable, but proper scientific protocols must be followed." After the commissioner departed, Aaron and Vorak remained in the administrative dome, both stunned by this sudden disruption to their lives. "He can't do this," Aaron whispered, fighting back tears. "Can he?" Vorak knelt down, his massive frame making the gesture all the more significant. His scales had settled into a determined blue. "Listen to me carefully, Aaron. We have faced challenges before, and we will face this one too. I promise you, you will not be taken from our family. Not tomorrow. Not ever." "But how?" He said it was decided at the highest levels. "There are always options," Vorak said, rising to his full height. "Come, we need to return home and talk with Kalith. She has contacts in the linguistic division of the authority, who may provide insight into these new protocols." As they left the administrative dome, Aaron noticed a group of Zakar adults watching them, their expressions and scale colors clearly disapproving. The public announcement had stirred up dormant prejudices. It seemed... "Head high," Vorak murmured, placing a protective hand on Aaron's shoulder. "You have nothing to be ashamed of." Back at their home, they found Kalith already there, having been notified of the situation by her contacts. Her research materials were spread across their living space, and she was deep in conversation with someone via the communication system. "Yes, I understand the legal precedent," she was saying as they entered. "But surely the childhood protection statutes would override the observation requirements in this case." She noticed their arrival and quickly concluded the call. "I'll contact you again soon. Thank you." She embraced Aaron immediately, her scales glowing with protective intensity. "I've been researching the new protocols since I heard they're overreaching their authority." "Commissioner Ethel seemed very certain of his powers," Vorak replied grimly. "He's scheduled a transport for tomorrow morning." Kalith's scales flashed with anger. "Over my dead body. I've been in touch with Dr. Naren from the Cross-Species Medical Ethics Committee. She believes these observation periods violate at least 3 interplanetary statutes regarding the rights of minors." "Can she help us fight this legally?" Vorak asked. "She's preparing a challenge now, but legal processes take time." Kalith turned to Aaron. "How are you holding up, Starlight?" Aaron tried to appear brave. "I'm okay. Just scared about being taken away again." "That's not going to happen," Kalith assured, though the uncertainty in her scale colors betrayed her concern. The home communication system chimed again, this time showing Zeli's school identification. Kalith answered quickly. "Mom!" Zeli's voice came through, tense and urgent. "There's something happening at school. A group of parents has shown up demanding that all non-native species be removed from classes immediately. The teachers are trying to calm them down, but it's getting ugly." Some of them mentioned Aaron specifically. Vorak and Kalith exchanged alarmed glances. "Stay inside the building," Vorak instructed. "We'll come get you and Rin right away." As Vorak prepared to leave, Kalith turned to Aaron. "Pack essential items, quickly. I fear this situation is escalating beyond just the authorities' new protocols." "Where are we going?" Aaron asked, already moving to gather belongings. "To my sister's home in the Northern District, temporarily," Kalith explained. "She's part of the Scientific Council and has diplomatic immunity. They can't enter her property without high-level clearance." Within minutes, Vorak had returned with Zeli and Rin, both children visibly shaken by the hostility they had witnessed at the school. "They were saying horrible things," Zeli reported, her scales a distressed gray. "About humans being dangerous, about contamination risks. Some parents were pulling their children out of classes when they found out Aaron had been in the same learning spaces." "It's madness," Vorak muttered. "One announcement from the authority, and years of progress unravel." "Not entirely," Kalith countered. "Remember, there were many who defended Aaron at the council hearing. Not everyone fears difference." As the family quickly packed essentials, a loud knock came at their entrance portal. They froze, exchanging worried glances. "Vorak? Kalith?" It was a familiar voice, Elder Sykra, who had made the community announcement earlier. Please, I need to speak with you urgently. Vorak approached the door cautiously. What is it, Elder? I'm alone, she assured him. Please, this concerns the safety of your family. After a moment's hesitation, Vorak opened the door. Elder Sykra entered quickly, her ancient scales barely glimmering with agitation. You must leave immediately, she said without preamble. Commissioner Ethel has expedited the removal order. They're coming for Aaron tonight, not tomorrow. What? Calith exclaimed. On what grounds? Public safety concerns, Elder Sykra replied grimly. The protest at the school has been magnified in reports to the Central Authority. They're using it as justification to accelerate the observation protocol implementation. This is outrageous, Vorak growled, his scales darkening. They're manipulating public fear to advance their agenda. Yes, the elder agreed. Which is why I'm here. Not everyone on the council supports these measures. Some of us still remember what you and your family did for our community by showing that compassion transcends species. She handed them a small device. This will temporarily mask your biosignatures from standard scanning. It won't fool a direct scan, but it should help you leave the district undetected. My transport is waiting 2 blocks away, in the service alley behind the Nutrient Distribution Center. It will take you wherever you need to go. Calith embraced the elder, her scales flashing with gratitude. Thank you for risking your position to help us. It is the right thing to do, Elder Sykra replied simply. Now hurry. They'll be here within the hour. The family quickly finished gathering their essentials. As they prepared to leave, Aaron looked around at the home that had become a sanctuary, uncertain if they would ever return. Wait, the human child said suddenly, rushing to a personal storage unit and removing a small device. My translation application. We can't leave it behind. Good thinking, Vorak approved. It might prove useful, and it represents your contribution to our community. They slipped out through the rear exit of their home, activating the biosignature masking device. The normally bustling pathways of the district were unusually quiet, with many families having retreated indoors amid the growing tension. Moving as inconspicuously as possible, challenging with a human child among them, they made their way toward the rendezvous point. Just as they approached the service alley, a patrol vehicle from the Interspecies Authority glided overhead, its scanning beams sweeping the area. Down, Vorak whispered urgently, guiding them into the shadows between buildings. They held their breath as the patrol passed. Once it was gone, they hurried to the waiting transport, a modest cargo vessel disguised as a supply delivery vehicle. Northern Scientific District, Calith instructed the pilot, a young Zakar who nodded without question. As the transport rose silently into the night sky, Aaron looked back at the only home known since arriving on this planet. The glowing domes of the Zakar village grew smaller in the distance, and somewhere among them, authority officials would soon be discovering an empty house. What happens now? Aaron asked quietly. Vorak placed a reassuring hand on the child's shoulder. Now we fight, not with weapons, but with truth. We show them that family bonds transcend biology, that fear should never override compassion. And if they don't listen, Zélie asked, her youthful idealism tempered by the reality of their situation. Calith's scales glowed with fierce determination. Then we keep fighting, because that's what families do. They protect each other, no matter what. As their transport disappeared into the night, carrying them toward an uncertain future, Aaron felt a strange mix of fear and hope. This world had become home. This alien family had become everything. And despite the challenges ahead, one thing was certain. They would face them together, their bonds stronger than any regulation or prejudice that sought to break them apart. The northern reaches of Azurin were dramatically different from the eastern district they had left behind. Jagged crystalline formations jutted from the landscape, capturing and refracting the light of the rising moons. The scientific district was built directly into these natural structures, with research facilities and residential domes seamlessly integrated with the crystalline environment. Their transport descended toward a modest but elegant dome, nestled among smaller crystal spires. Unlike the communal arrangements of their home district, the residences here were more isolated, offering privacy to the scientists and academics who valued solitude for their work. "We've arrived," Caliph announced, as the transport settled onto a landing platform. "My sister Nyara may seem intense. She's brilliant, but not accustomed to children. Or emotions," Vorak added with a hint of humor, attempting to lighten the mood. They disembarked, thanking the pilot, who quickly departed, leaving no trace of their arrival. The entry portal to Nyara's dome illuminated as they approached, recognizing Calith's genetic signature. The interior was spare and functional, dominated by holographic research displays and unusual specimens preserved in stasis fields. A tall, slender Zakar female emerged from an adjacent room, her scales an austere silver blue that rarely shifted, a trait among some Zakar scientists who practiced emotional regulation to maintain objectivity. "Sister," Nyara acknowledged Calith with a formal touch of foreheads. "Your message indicated urgency." Her gaze swept over the family, lingering on Aaron with scientific curiosity, rather than the fear or hostility they had grown accustomed to seeing. "So this is the human integration subject." "This is Aaron," Calith corrected gently. "Our child. And yes, our situation is urgent. The Interspecies Authority is attempting to remove Aaron from our care for observation periods that violate family rights statutes." Nyara gestured them toward a sitting area, her movements precise and economical. "I've reviewed the new protocols. They are methodologically flawed and ethically questionable. The sample size of one human child cannot yield statistically significant data about human Zakar integration potential." Vorak looked slightly taken aback by this clinical assessment. "Our concern is more immediate than statistical validity. They're coming to take our child tonight." "Yes, I understand the emotional component," Nyara replied, though her tone suggested she didn't entirely. "You may stay here while we develop a strategy. My residence falls under Scientific Council jurisdiction, which supersedes standard authority access protocols." "Thank you, Aunt Nyara," Zili said formally, adopting the respectful tone that adults in the scientific district preferred. Nyara blinked, seemingly surprised at being addressed as Aunt. She nodded awkwardly before turning to Aaron. "Human child, Aaron, I would be interested in discussing your neurological adaptation to Zakar language patterns. My research specialty is xenolinguistics." "Perhaps later, sister," Calith interjected, sensing Aaron's exhaustion. "We've had a difficult day." "Of course. Biological needs. Rest cycles." Nyara indicated a hallway. "There are sleep chambers through there. The environmental controls can be adjusted for human physiological requirements." As the family settled into their temporary refuge, Aaron couldn't help but feel like they had taken several steps backward. After a year of building acceptance and integration, they were once again fugitives, hiding from authorities who viewed a human child as a threat or an experiment rather than a person. Later that night, as the others slept, Aaron sat by a viewport, watching the crystalline landscape glitter under the triple moonlight. The Forbidden Festival would be happening soon, the night of ascending lights. But instead of experiencing it with friends and family, they were in hiding. A soft sound alerted Aaron to Nyara's presence. The scientist approached cautiously, her movements deliberately slowed, as if approaching a wild animal. "You cannot sleep," she observed. "Is the chamber not calibrated correctly for human physiology?" "The chamber is fine," Aaron replied. "My mind won't rest." Nyara considered this. Cognitive disruption due to stress? Understandable. She hesitated, then sat down nearby, not close enough for comfort, but closer than she had been to any of them since their arrival. "My sister loves you as her own offspring. This is fascinating to me." Because I'm human? Aaron asked, used to such curiosity. Because love itself is fascinating, Nyara replied unexpectedly. The biochemical and neurological processes that create such powerful bonds between unrelated beings, bonds strong enough to risk social standing, career advancement, even personal safety. She gestured toward the sleeping chambers where the rest of the family lay. They would sacrifice everything for you, not because of biological imperative, but because of choice. Aaron hadn't expected such insight from the seemingly detached scientist. Do you think that's wrong? Wrong. Nyara's scales shifted slightly, the first emotional indicator she had displayed. No. Scientifically remarkable. Perhaps evolutionarily unexpected. But not wrong. She turned to face Aaron directly. I will help your family not just because Caliph is my sister, but because your case represents something important. Evidence that compassion can transcend biological programming. Thank you, Aaron said simply. Nyara nodded, then reached into a pocket of her research garment and extracted a small device. This is for you, a subdermal translator, more advanced than standard models. It allows for nuanced emotional connotation translation, not just literal meaning. She handed it to Aaron. I developed it for field researchers, but it may prove useful in communicating your situation to authorities. When beings truly understand each other's emotional context, conflict is often reduced. With that, she rose and returned to her research area, leaving Aaron to ponder this unexpected alliance and the small device that represented a bridge between worlds. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Nyara had contacted several colleagues on the scientific council, and they arrived early to discuss strategy. Caliph and Vorak joined these discussions, while Zeli kept Rin occupied with educational games in another room. Aaron sat quietly among the Zakar scientists, listening intently. The legal basis for these observation periods is tenuous at best, argued a corpulent Zakar with jade scales, introduced as Professor Thalv, the same renowned quantum biology expert from the academy that Aaron had been accepted to attend. They're citing Public Safety Statute 42B, but that was intended for quarantine scenarios involving unknown pathogens, not established residents. Commissioner Ethel has significant political support from the conservative faction, countered another scientist, her scales a pragmatic brown. They've been looking for an opportunity to restrict cross-species integration since the initial controversy. What about the medical ethics angle? Caliph suggested. Dr. Naren was preparing a challenge based on minor protection statutes. A promising approach, Nyara agreed. But medical challenges require time for committee review. We need immediate intervention. The discussion continued in this vein, with various legal and political strategies proposed and analyzed. Aaron listened carefully, but increasingly felt like a problem to be solved rather than a person with agency in the situation. Finally, the human child stood up, drawing the attention of the room. May I speak? The scientists fell silent, some looking surprised, as if they had forgotten Aaron could participate in the conversation. Of course, Caliph encouraged, her scales warming with maternal pride. You're discussing legal challenges and political strategies, Aaron began, choosing words carefully. But there's another approach we haven't considered. What if I address the authority directly? What if I tell my own story? Professor Thalv's scales rippled with skepticism. Child, the authority isn't interested in personal narratives. They deal in regulations and protocols. But regulations and protocols are created by people, Aaron persisted. People with emotions and experiences, just like the ones you're studying. Aunt Nyara. The child held up the subdermal translator she had been given. You said yourself that when beings truly understand each other's emotional context, conflict is reduced. A thoughtful silence fell over the room. Vorak was the first to respond, his scales glowing with a mixture of pride and concern. It would be risky. The authority might simply use your appearance as an opportunity to take you into custody. Not if we control the venue, Nyara said slowly, her analytical mind clearly racing. The annual Symposium on Xenocultural Studies begins tomorrow at the Central Academy. Every significant official in the scientific and cultural authorities will be present. If Aaron were to address the symposium, they couldn't simply seize a presenter at the most prestigious scientific gathering of the year. Professor Thalv concluded, warming to the idea. The political backlash would be significant. But how do we get Aaron onto the program? Calith asked. The symposium schedule is finalized months in advance. A smile spread across Nyara's usually impassive face, a rare expression that transformed her features. I happen to be the keynote speaker this year, and according to symposium regulations, keynote speakers are permitted to include demonstration subjects in their presentations. You would present me as a demonstration subject? Aaron asked, unsure how to feel about this classification. Officially, yes, Nyara confirmed. But in reality, you would be a co-presenter. My scheduled topic is neurological adaptations in cross-species communication. Your experiences are directly relevant. The scientists began to buzz with excitement, scales flashing in rapid communication patterns as they refined the plan. Aaron felt a surge of hope. This approach would allow for direct engagement with the authorities on terms they couldn't easily dismiss. There's still significant risk, Vorak cautioned. If it goes poorly, we could lose everything. We're already at risk of losing everything, Calith replied softly. At least this way, Aaron has a voice in determining the outcome. The decision made, they spent the rest of the day preparing. Nyara worked with Aaron on the presentation content, while Professor Thalv used his connections to ensure sympathetic members of the Scientific Council would be prominently seated. Calith contacted Dr. Naren, who agreed to attend with medical documentation, supporting Aaron's successful integration. Meanwhile, news reports from the Eastern District confirmed their fears. Authority officers had indeed arrived at their home shortly after their escape, and were now conducting a planet-wide search for the missing human subject. Public opinion appeared divided, with some citizens expressing concern about the authorities' heavy-handed approach, while others repeated fears about human unpredictability. The following morning, as they prepared to depart for the Central Academy, Vorak received an encrypted communication from Elder Psychra. Commissioner Ethel suspects you may attempt to attend the symposium, the Elder warned. He has stationed officers at all public entrances to the Academy. Be extremely cautious. This news dampened their spirits, but Nyara remained unperturbed. We will use the research staff entrance, she stated matter-of-factly. My credentials grant access to restricted areas. They traveled in a private transport bearing the Scientific Council insignia, which allowed them to bypass standard security checkpoints. Aaron wore traditional Zakar academic attire that Nyara had modified to fit a human frame, complete with a ceremonial collar that partially obscured the child's face. The Central Academy was an architectural marvel, a vast dome of crystalline material supported by graceful arches that seemed to defy gravity. Inside, representatives from various scientific disciplines and cultural authorities mingled in the grand atrium, their diverse scale patterns creating a living mosaic of color. Stay close, Calith murmured as they followed Nyara through the crowd. And remember, if anything goes wrong, your safety comes first. We can find another way. Aaron nodded, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. This was the moment to stand up, not just for personal freedom, but for the principle that compassion and connection could transcend biological differences. They reached the preparation area for presenters without incident. Nyara efficiently organized her materials, while Calith and Vorak, posing as research assistants, helped Aaron review the key points they had prepared. The symposium will begin shortly, announced an attendant. Keynote speakers should proceed to the holding area behind the main stage. As they moved to comply, A commanding voice cut through the bustle of activity. Scientist Nyara of the Xenolinguistics Division. They turned to find Commissioner Ethel standing in the doorway, flanked by two authority officers. His dark scales rippled with satisfaction as his gaze locked onto Aaron. "I thought I might find the missing human subject in your company," he said smoothly. "Your family connection to Citizen Caleth made this a logical place to search." Nyara stepped forward, her professional demeanor unwavering. "Commissioner Ethel, what a pleasant surprise. Have you come to attend my keynote address on cross-species communication neurological adaptations?" "I've come to retrieve a subject under authority jurisdiction," Ethel replied coldly. "The human will be coming with us immediately." "I'm afraid that's impossible," Nyara countered. "This human is a critical demonstration subject in my presentation, which begins in precisely 14 minutes. Removing my subject now would constitute interference with scientific council proceedings, a violation of Separation of Authorities Statute 17A, if I'm not mistaken." Commissioner Ethel's scales darkened with irritation. "This is not a classroom demonstration. Scientist Nyara, this is a matter of interplanetary security." "Is it?" Professor Thalv's imposing form appeared behind the commissioner. "Because from a scientific perspective, it appears to be a case of administrative overreach into academic jurisdiction." He gestured to several other senior scientists who had gathered behind him. "The Scientific Council is quite concerned about this attempted interference." Ethel found himself suddenly outnumbered by some of the most influential minds on Ajurin. He hesitated, scales shifting through patterns of calculation. "The presentation may proceed," he finally conceded. "But my officers will remain to ensure the human subject is properly transferred to authority custody immediately afterward." "That will be acceptable," Nyara agreed before anyone could object. She turned to Aaron. "Are you prepared for our presentation, demonstration subject?" Aaron understood the role to play. "Yes, Scientist Nyara, I am ready." As they proceeded toward the stage, Caleth whispered urgently to Nyara. "What are you doing? They'll take Aaron as soon as the presentation ends." "Trust me, sister," Nyara replied, her scales showing the first signs of genuine emotion, determination. "The presentation itself will change everything." The main auditorium of the Central Academy could accommodate thousands, and today it was filled to capacity. Representatives from every scientific discipline, cultural authority, and even some diplomatic corps were present for the annual symposium's keynote address. As Nyara was introduced, Aaron waited in the wings, heart racing. Vorak placed a reassuring hand on the child's shoulder. "Remember, speak your truth. That is more powerful than any regulation." Nyara began her address with a comprehensive overview of xenolinguistic research, establishing her expertise and scientific credibility. Then, 20 minutes into her presentation, she shifted focus. "Theory and laboratory studies provide valuable insights," she told the assembled dignitaries. "But there is no substitute for direct observation of successful cross-species communication adaptation. Today, I have the unique opportunity to present a remarkable case study." She gestured toward the wings. "I would like to introduce a human child who has demonstrated unprecedented neurological adaptation to Zakar language, culture, and family structures." This was the cue. Aaron walked onto the stage, conscious of the thousands of eyes, and the authority officers waiting at the exits. A collective murmur rippled through the audience at the sight of a human child in Zakar academic attire. "This is Aaron," Nyara continued, "who has resided on Azurin for more than one planetary cycle and has achieved fluency in our language, customs, and scientific concepts. Rather than present my analysis of this subject's adaptation, I will allow the subject to speak directly to you about the experience." She stepped aside, giving Aaron access to the communication amplifier. The human child took a deep breath, activated Nyara's advanced translator device, and began to speak in flawless Zakar language. Distinguished scientists, cultural authorities, and citizens of Ajrin, Arin began, voice steady despite the intimidating audience. I stand before you not as a subject or specimen, but as a child who found a family across the stars. The auditorium fell silent as Aaron recounted the journey from being discovered alone in the forest to becoming part of a Zakar family, learning their language, embracing their customs, contributing to their community through the development of translation tools, and finally being accepted into the prestigious academy. The Interspecies Authority now wishes to separate me from my family for observation periods. Aaron continued. They claim this is necessary for scientific understanding and public safety. But I ask you, what science is served by breaking the bonds of family? What safety is protected by causing trauma to a child? Aaron's voice grew stronger. The translator, capturing not just the words, but the emotional resonance behind them. I am human by birth, but I am Zakar by choice and love. My family, Kalith, Vorak, Zeli, and Rin, have taught me that compassion transcends biology. They have shown me that family is defined not by the color of one's scales, but by the connections we build through understanding and acceptance. The human child paused, looking directly at Commissioner Ethel, who stood rigidly at the side of the auditorium. I respect the authority's mission to protect, but true protection comes from building bridges, not barriers, from embracing difference, not fearing it. Aaron held up the translator device Nyara had provided. This technology allows me to communicate my emotions as well as my words. So let me be clear. I am not afraid of you. I do not resent your caution. But I ask you to see me, to truly see me, not as a human among Zakar, but as a child among family. As Aaron concluded, the auditorium remained silent for a long moment. Then, from somewhere in the back, applause began. It spread slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm, until the entire hall resonated with it. Many of the Zakar scientists were displaying the rare scale pattern of deep emotional impact, a shifting aurora of colors that rippled from head to toe. Professor Thalv stepped forward to stand beside Aaron. As head of the Advanced Sciences Academy, I can confirm that this human child has demonstrated exceptional aptitude and integration. The Academy stands by its decision to accept Aaron as a student, and we reject any attempt to disrupt this child's education or family bonds. Other scientists rose to join them on stage, forming a protective circle around Aaron. Commissioner Ethel, seeing the tide of public opinion turning decisively against him, approached the stage with obvious reluctance. The authorities' concerns are based on established protocols, he began. But the audience's murmurs of disapproval caused him to pause. He looked at Aaron, then at the assembled scientists, and finally at Kalith and Vorak, who had moved to stand protectively near their child. Something in his rigid posture seemed to soften slightly. However, protocols are designed to serve beings, not the other way around. In light of the compelling testimony presented today, I will recommend to the Central Authority that this case be reviewed. Until such review is complete, the observation period requirement will be suspended. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough for now. Kalith and Vorak rushed forward to embrace Aaron, their scales glowing with relief and pride. The audience's applause redoubled at this display of family unity. As they left the stage, surrounded by supportive scientists and sympathetic authorities, Aaron felt a profound sense of accomplishment. For the first time since arriving on this alien world, the human child had truly found a voice, not just to speak, but to be heard. "You were magnificent," Kalith whispered, her scales shimmering with maternal pride. "Indeed," agreed Nyara, approaching them with the hint of a smile. "Your neurological responses during the speech were fascinating. The emotional contagion effect on the audience was stronger than any I've documented in my research." "In other words," Vorak translated with a chuckle, You touched their hearts. Even my scientific sister-in-laws. Niara's scales rippled in what might have been embarrassment. Emotional responses can be scientifically significant, she insisted. But the warmth in her voice belied her clinical framing. As they prepared to leave the academy, Elder Psychra approached them, her ancient scales glowing with a gentle wisdom. You have done something remarkable today, she told Aaron. You have reminded us all that progress comes not from fearing difference, but from embracing it. The family returned to Niara's residence to collect Rin and their belongings. Though Commissioner Ethel's concession had bought them time, they knew the battle wasn't over. The central authority would review the case, and conservative factions might push back against the public sentiment in their favor. But something fundamental had changed. As they traveled back to their home in the Eastern District, they were met not with suspicion, but with supportive gestures from many in the community. News of Aaron's speech had spread rapidly through interplanetary communication networks, and public opinion was shifting. 1 year later, as Aaron prepared for the second term at the Advanced Sciences Academy, the changes were evident throughout Ajurin society. The restrictive observation protocols had been permanently rescinded following a comprehensive review by a joint committee of the Scientific Council and the Interspecies Authority. In their place, a new integration support program had been established, with Aaron's family serving as advisors. The Zakar family had been awarded the Interstellar Humanitarian Medal for their compassionate actions and unwavering commitment to family bonds that transcended biological differences. Their home had become a frequent stop for diplomatic visitors interested in learning about successful cross-species integration. More significantly, Earth and Ajurin had established a formal cultural exchange program. Selected human families were now visiting the planet for extended diplomatic stays, while Zakar representatives reciprocated on Earth. Aaron served as a symbolic bridge between the worlds, regularly communicating with both the human birth mother, who had been located, and the adoptive Zakar family. On the evening before the new academic term began, Aaron stood on the observation platform of their family home, watching the 3 moons of Ajurin rise above the horizon. The protective goggles invented for the Night of Ascending Lights festival the previous year were no longer necessary. Aaron's eyes had gradually adapted to the planetary conditions, another small miracle of biology, responding to environment and determination. Calith joined her human child on the platform, her scales glowing with the warm amber that Aaron had come to recognize as maternal affection. "Excited about the new term?" she asked. "Yes," Aaron replied, turning to smile at her. "Professor Thalv says we'll begin advanced quantum biology this cycle. And there's a new human exchange student joining the class, the first besides me." "You've opened the path for others," Calith said proudly. "Your courage changed things for many beings, not just yourself." From inside the home, the sounds of Vorak preparing the evening meal mingled with Zeli's animated conversation about her own studies and Rin's laughter as he played with a scientific puzzle toy. The sounds of family, a concept that had proven more universal than anyone had imagined. "I received a message from Earth today," Aaron said after a moment. "My birth mother will be visiting during the equinox break. She asked if it would be possible for both of you to join us for a shared meal." Calith's scales shifted to a pattern of deep emotion. "We would be honored. Family is family, across any distance." As darkness fell, and the bioluminescent lights of the city began to glow, Aaron reflected on the journey that had led from abandonment in a strange forest to this moment of belonging. Difference, the human child had learned, was not a barrier, but a beginning, the starting point of friendship, understanding, and growth. "Are you coming in for dinner?" Vorak called from inside. "I've prepared your favorite nutrient combination." "Coming," Aaron replied, taking one last look at the rising moons before turning toward the warmth of home. This world of scaled beings with glowing backs had become as familiar as breathing, not despite their differences, but because of the bridges they had built across them. In the distance, the lights of the city shimmered like earthbound stars, each glowing dome a reminder of the countless families, of all species, who called this world home. And among them, one family that had proven that love could indeed transcend the boundaries of biology, tradition, and fear. When a human child found home among aliens, they had all discovered something profound: that family was not defined by the accidents of birth, but by the deliberate choices of the heart. And that lesson, Aaron knew, was worth every challenge they had faced to learn it.